Hello, and welcome to our first virtual guest interview for our Women in Ministry course. Tonight we will be having a conversation with Mrs. Christy Lee Donaldson about her journey as a woman in ministry, and we're excited to get started, so we're going to jump right in. Welcome, Christy.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So we're going to start with our first question, and we just want you to give us a summary of who you are, first of all, as a woman. Your family life, your personal life, your career, and then we want you to kind of segue into who you are as a woman in ministry and what that looks like for you.
Okay. So, definitely, family is a big part of my life. We have an almost 2-year-old son, and when he joined us, he really, brightened up our family and added a lot of joy. And so that's been a big part of the last 2 years for me and our family. And I've been married about 6.5 years now, so time is moving along. And from a career standpoint, I am an accountant, and I have worked for a major corporation for about 8.5 years. And so I work as a manager in the accounting department, and I work remotely. So I work from my home and occasionally travel to the office. So that's also a big part of my life as well. And right now, what we do primarily in ministry is we have small group meetings, mostly recovery type groups for divorce. And my husband kind of facilitates it from the perspective of being impacted by divorce himself over 25 years ago. And when I facilitate it from the angle of being a child of divorce.
Okay.
And so also my husband has recently been through a battle with cancer and is surviving that battle. And so he is also recently beginning a support group for cancer patients as well as the caretakers. And so that's something obviously, that he's been through, and he's been able to kind of turn that into a positive message to reach out to others.
Awesome. So now that we have been given a summary of who you are in a nutshell, would you be able to describe for us, Christy, your journey to your current role in ministry? What were some of the things that you remember along the way from your starting point to where you are now? And once you've answered that, could you also share with us some women who have spoken into your life and or who have mentored you?
Sure. So, well, I would say that, from a young age that I felt that I was going to be involved in ministry in some capacity. And I remember at that young age, my parents are actually separated at the time. They separated and got back together, and then later got divorced. And I remember being at church, and we were praying. They just had people not come up to the front, but we were praying just as a congregation and laying hands on for the people that were around us. And somebody in particular, this older lady, looked back and said, I felt something from this girl. She testified basically after the prayer. And so it was really something that was touching and meaningful at the time.
Wow.
And so that was happening at a really young age. And so some of those things really sustained me, through the years, and kind of let me know that I was headed in that direction. And I had a pivotal moment when I was trying to decide about college right in my senior year, a pivotal moment that I kept wondering what I was going to do, go to a regular college, go to, for music, I played the flute, I sang, and so I was wondering if I was going to go to college for that or go to Bible school. And I ended up taking the turn to go to Bible school first, and then ultimately did go to a 4-year degree. Mm-hmm. So anyways, I did do that, and then moved on to, ultimately participate in ministry and go on. But there have been, many women who have touched me, women ministers I've had the opportunity to do. One in particular, her name is Kathy Fleming, and she had come to my church when I was in my teens, and she was just somebody who sometimes I'd see her more frequently than others, but every time I see her, she's just somebody who really speaks into my life and really has a message for me, at that moment. And so she's somebody who builds women up and who, it's not a competitive relationship, but it's just one of edification, really, and just kind of encouragement. And so she's been somebody who's particularly I'm fond of.
Wow, awesome. That is awesome. So we're sure that you haven't had all sunny days in this ministry walk, in this Christian walk period. So could you share with us first a particular obstacle or challenge that impacted you the most, even if it turned into something positive, especially if it turned into something positive? And then on the flip side of that, could you share a particular joy or victory that encouraged you the most along the way?
Sure. So, I would say from a challenge standpoint, I can kind of think of a couple of things. One is just, I think, as a minister, sometimes we feel the need to put on a facade in the sense that, oh, they're having prayer today for this particular thing, and if I go up to the line because I'm dealing with that, to the front to be prayed for, will I be judged? That type of thing.
Yeah.
And so I really, in my early years, would say that really affected me, and I would really get in my mind and not be more worried about what other people would think. And what I would say is that as I've gotten older, I've felt the need to be more real and to just be in the moment and just be like, look, here's where I'm at, you know what I mean? And don't put me on a pedestal that I don't have the same issues that you do. And I actually think it is more meaningful to the people you're ministering to, because they don't feel like they have to be like, yes, I'm in faith for this, when they really are having a down moment. Even Jesus wept, right? When he knew that his friend had passed away, or he said, Lord, when he knew he had to go to the cross, Lord, let this cup pass from me.
Right.
He had times of emotion and he was real about it. And so I think it's important for us to embrace that and to show that and be vulnerable. But I think on the flip side, I think some of the challenges that can occur is that you will get close to people when you're in ministry, and you will begin to rely on them and trust on them. And sometimes, those will be people that will let you down. Just like with Jesus, it was like his inner circle. Can you imagine those people that he poured the most into,
right, and
just thought they are going to be my, carry this banner when I'm gone. And some of those people, I'm sure, broke his heart with, their behavior. And, I think there are times in ministry where our heart can be broken because we allow ourselves to become vulnerable. We're around people that we volunteer with or minister with, and sometimes they disappoint us, and turn away even from the things of God, which is really hard after you sowed a lot of time in them.
Right.
But you just have to believe God that you planted seeds while you were there with them, and that those won't come back void, and whether you ultimately see the harvest or not from them turning around, you just have to know that hopefully that will turn around, right, and believe God that it will.
Right.
But I think it can be challenging because it's an emotional connection with people. It's not like a work environment where you're just have a lot of boundaries up. You let people into your heart more.
Awesome. So what about joys and victories that have really been encouraging to you as you've journeyed through your calling and into your calling?
Sure. I think the biggest joy is watching people grow and watching them kind of live out what you've seen them be taught and really live it out.
Right.
Meaning not just in front of you, but watch it when they're behind closed doors, or, like I this one time, one of the people that we have ministered through here met through divorce care and ultimately, come to our services now. And she began to, she said, I had forgotten with my older children, I used to sit and read the Bible with them and have Bible studies. And so she just had her heart sparked to do that with her youngest son. And so she asked him what book they wanted the Bible they were going to start with, and he picked Job. And she said, oh, no. But he ended up, they really enjoyed it, and they had a good time going through it. But it's just neat, I think, when you see people kind of walking it out and really, embracing it and seeing it transform their life. That, to me, is what it's all about, is that, seeing that.
Amen. That is awesome. That is a joy and a victory indeed. So would you be able to share with us any spiritual practices or disciplines that help you to remain settled in everyday life in the light of the challenges that you may face in ministry?
Sure. I think, for a lot of us, I think the challenge is balancing it. And I think, especially when you say women in ministry, right, is that it's already a challenge if you work outside of the home in a non-ministry role,
right,
and balance family and children and all of that. And then when you add the ministerial component to it, I think it's another challenge. I think when you lay your children in there, it's another challenge, because you go through seasons, I think, where you can be more involved, there every time the doors are open.
Right.
If it's camp meeting, you're there, for 3 services a day, the lunch, the dinner, the everything
right.
there is, and setting up and cleaning up. And you go through seasons, I think, where there's ebbs and tides. And I think that that's really something that you have to get comfortable with. But I think that when I'm feeling the pressure of that, to me, worship music or Christian music is something that's just a comfort to me and helps try to calm me in that storm of competing priorities.
Right.
What I would say is just trying to find a lot of comfort in that, and also just kind of going back, I guess, and meditating if there's particular scriptures. When my personal practice is when I'm going through something or when I'm really believing God for something, I will go through and get scriptures from the Bible specifically related to that thing that I'm going through,
okay.
and I will type them up, and I carry them everywhere with me. They're rehearsed. I have a minute just to look. I'm looking at them and rereading them, and so I guess that's kind of my way of meditating on them is by, and again, I remember when we were trying to adopt our son, and I just had a whole list of scriptures about, the Lord's promises and how things would work. And I carried them everywhere with me. I mean, everywhere. And so I still have the piece of paper folded up.
Wow.
It's just one of those things where you have to keep your mind, I guess, settled when you're believing for something. And you can't just believe randomly. You have to believe based on what he's promised us in his word. And so I have to keep going back and reminding myself. So just that's the way I personally works for me.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And then we want to wrap up with this one final question. What advice would you offer to a fellow woman in ministry? Something that you haven't touched on already. Just one golden thing that you think would speak to any woman, regardless of her walk in ministry.
I think to give yourself permission. Give yourself permission and to love everything, but also to forgive yourself when you can't, like we talked about the competing priorities, but I guess to forgive yourself when you can't be everywhere for everything, to really forgive yourself and not beat yourself up about that. And, but when you do decide amongst those competing priorities, when you do decide what you're going to do in that moment, to really be in that moment.
Right.
I'll never forget, and this sticks with me to this day, I was a singles minister several years ago, and I was very busy. I was being the Martha at the event. I was very busy going to the back and getting everything and making sure the food is reheated. And the stove broke, and we were trying to heat things in a toaster oven, and there was 20 people there, and it was just not working out. And I was very stressed out. And so at the end of the event, when things started calming down, I came out and I sat down at one of the tables, and I was talking to someone who had attended, and I said, did you have a good time? And she said to me, she said, I did. She said, but I really was looking forward to spending time with you.
Wow.
And you were in the back. And it really said something to me, that sometimes it's not as much about how perfect it is or how much things align to your vision, but it's about really being present in the moment.
Right.
And making sure you're meaningfully looking people in the eye and really embracing that time that you have with them, because it touches people, and that's what they're looking for, is a real connection, I think.
Wow. That is an awesome piece of advice, and it's a great way to close out this interview session. It's closing out on a high note and something that we can look forward to incorporating into our everyday walk as we live out this thing that we call being a woman in ministry. So we do thank you, Christy, for joining us tonight, and we hope that your interview would be a blessing to the students in the class. God bless you, and thanks again.
Thank you.